And good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to a Monday edition, a matinee Monday of the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network. Yours truly, Captain Lou, in the chair here till about 2 o'clock Eastern Time on this Monday, May the 11th, 2020. Hope you had a great weekend. Hope you had a fantastic Mother's Day. All you mothers out there, I hope it was a great afternoon. I know here in Michigan, you might have had to get the snow shovel out in some of our locations. I'll tell you, this weather's crazy around here. It's going to be in the 80s next week, and it was a little brisk this morning on our walk. My beautiful bride and I went for our 3-mile walk this morning, and it was chilly, about 35 degrees, I think, at 9 o'clock or 9:30 this morning. But hey, that's what it's all about. It's Michigan, and I'm sure it's a little bit goofy in your neck of the woods. Hey, we got a lot to talk about here this afternoon. Jeff Disher is going to join us at the bottom of the hour as well. We'll see what's going on in his world as we talk the world of professional sports. We'll talk a little bit about Episode 7 and Episode 8 of The Last Dance last night as they're starting to wind that down, the Michael Jordan documentary. It was interesting. It a little emotional for him, and I think it might have went a little bit more deeper into maybe quelling some of the rumors about his dad who was murdered. And the more I watch it, and I guess they're starting to get me to believe that his gambling had nothing to do with it. 25 years ago, I wasn't quite sold on that, but the more you watch it and you see the interviews and whatnot, I tend to agree with them that that had nothing to do with it, and it was just a random act of violence. But it dove into Michael Jordan getting back in the 90s and for his second run at three straight world championships. And so we'll talk about that, and we'll also talk a little bit about Scottie Pippen, and it seems like the ever-evolving soap opera with him, and my befuddlement sometimes at how much praise he gets, and how some people like to think he was one of the top 3 or top 2 basketball players in the mid to late 90s, which just, I don't know, just blows my mind. There were so many other great athletes, great basketball players in that time, and to say that he was better than 95% of them, just, I don't know, this blows me away. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. The latest saga on when we're going to start the national or the 4 major sports here in the United States, or 3 anyways. The NFL, of course, with a little more leeway as far as that goes when they're going to get their season started back up. We'll touch on that a little bit as well. The top minor league team, or league, I should say, in hockey, the AHL, announced this morning that they are going to just go ahead and cancel the rest of the year. Not totally surprised by that. I'm saddened by it, as I mentioned, but you had to know this was coming. Unfortunately, they don't have the revenue stream coming in, and it's just not safe to open them up. They have so many other things going on behind the scenes that to have them prolong it and possibly get it back going in, I don't know, June or July, like maybe the NHL is thinking about doing. I just don't see it without the TV revenue coming in to back it up. It makes no sense to me to have them starting back up. So it looks like they're just going to focus their attention on hopefully getting the 2020/21 season up and running full bore in the middle of October, which is their normal starting time. So let's hope that they do that as well. We got other talk about the NCAA possibly getting when they're going to start. Mark Emmert coming out and saying that if there's no kids on campus, the NCAA will not start athletics. And I can see his point of view, but I can also see where that could be, in my opinion, one of the straws that might finally just to tell the Power 5 conferences just might say, you know what, we've had enough and we're done. And they're going to break away. I think it's coming. In my opinion, the Power 5 conferences, college football is just, they're their relationship with the NCAA is strained at best. And it's all the NCAA, they're lucky that the Power 5 conferences are still associating with them. They could totally break away and wouldn't even miss a beat. They wouldn't lose any television revenue. They could go with their own set of rules and they could be their own entity. And I think it's coming. The NCAA to me is such a sham right now that I think college football would benefit greatly just by being in their own empire. And I think they're going to. I mean, their national championship really has nothing to do with the NCAA. So I could see them splitting away. And it's coming in the next year or two. Now, would they still hold games without the students on campus? That's hard to say. But if you're going to sit here and tell me that college football, especially at those big levels, are going to say, you know what, with the amount of money that we're subject to losing because you don't want to have the games, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. And I think ultimately that's going to play the decision maker if these schools are if they're going to play or not. And I do believe that they are. I honestly think if there's any semblance of students on campus, I don't even care if it's a portion of them, they're going to get the green light to play. There's just too much at stake. And as sad as it sounds that it is money driven, well, the big thing that, I had a long conversation this morning with one of our guests that we have on the show regularly, and he's going to join us Wednesday at 1:15. Mark Van Vliet, who is my sidekick doing Aquinas College hockey games. He's the director of hockey operations at Aquinas. There's so much driven by football right now for these athletic departments at these major college levels, and at all of them, really. The other sports and the schools rely so much on getting these sports and getting the revenue from it. They're the lifeline for, besides maybe men's and women's basketball. All these other sports are so reliant on that budget, the windfall that college football brings. And I just can't see how that is going to stop. And that's why I think they're going to have it. And the other thing we were talking about, and I think this is going to weigh in a lot on students coming back to campus. We talked about it last week when we had the great conversation we had with Greg Chandler last Thursday. He covers Division III sports for the MIAA, which is the longest running Division III or any college in college football, as well as he covers sports for the Hope College, the Flying Dutchman. These schools are going to go they're going to wait as long as they can, and they're going to do everything in their power to get the students back on campus. And the example I brought up is I've heard this, and I wholeheartedly agree with this. Online schooling's great, but it's not the on-campus experience, and I still don't think you get the most out of your dollar. And some of these schools, especially the smaller ones or the more expensive ones like Stanford, like Northwestern, the Ivy League schools, and then the smaller schools, the private schools, where you're looking at anywhere from $50,000 to $75,000 a year to go to school. If my son is paying that kind of money, or if I'm, as a parent, footing that kind of bill to send my kids to school there, and for them to pay that themselves and have the amount of debt that they encounter, I would tell them, don't go. Take a year off until it's full-fledged, where you can go back and take your classes on campus. Some of them you can't take, like the labs for people that are in biology or pre-med or whatever. It's just so much money that's at stake, and these colleges can't afford to lose that kind of income, that kind of money coming in. So that they're going to do their best to get the students back on campus, and I think that's going to play a part of it. So I have a feeling down deep that the students are going to be going back to campus unless it is just really, really back to ground zero with this pandemic, and I don't think that's going to be the case. I think ultimately we're going to start slowly getting back to normal. It might take a couple of years to get back to 100% normal, or we may never be that way. but normal being the new normal where we're going to have students back on campus, even if it's half. Maybe if there's some type of compromise, I don't know, where they do have the people that will be able to take the classes online. But, students will be students. They're going to want to go back. They want that college life. They're just like me. They want to get out of the house. We're to the point now, I think, where if it is as much as the pandemic and the precautions that we've taken to get over this, people are starting really they're reaching their breaking point. And I think sooner or later, we as a society are going to have to try to get back to the new normal and get out and do stuff. And I think you're going to see more and more confidence in getting back out and interacting with the public and this and that. It's just like going to a game. You're not going to see 100,000 people, I don't think, in Michigan Stadium for a couple of years at least, or at AT&T Stadium. There are going to be the fanatics that are going to go out there, but I just don't think that it's going to be quite there yet. So it's something to keep in mind there. And, the other thing I wanted to touch on with the NCAA, and they've got the hammer coming, supposedly, with the basketball violations, the findings. With, for example, Kansas. With Bill Self, the level 1 violations, I believe they have 2 or 3 of them. In level 2 and level 3, they've got at least 5 to 10 more. The hammer's coming, or so they say. And according to Dick Vitale from ESPN, there's a couple other schools that are facing some huge, huge penalties coming up. And it's, that could be coming down this week. I think Arizona, you might see it. And then, of course, what the revelations that came out last night about Duke and Zion Williamson. Then you've got Louisville. Their allegations came out. They're level 1. They only had, I think, 1 level 1 finding and a handful of other level 2 findings, with the money from paid from boosters and whatnot. Here's my question to you is, okay, is it going to be enough? Will Louisville get a slap on the wrist for their violations because they cleaned house from top to bottom? And they did. They got rid of Rick Pitino. They got rid of the AD, all this and that. They've got a whole new coaching staff. And here's where it is broken a little bit, and I don't know what the answer is. Will Louisville get those out? Will they get the infractions? Will they be put on 3 years probation? I think they should, but will it actually happen? And how much is really going to happen to Duke? How much of this is hearsay, or how much of it is true with Zion Williamson getting improper benefits, or his family? Do you really think they'll go after the Blue Bloods hard? And I want to see Jay Billis. I want to see Jay Williams. I want to see Dick Vitale take Duke to task if they are found to be true. I don't think they will. And the reason I don't think they will is because of what the slap on the wrist that North Carolina got with the academic scandal. The Blue Bloods, they will never get hammered like that. It's like the saying Jerry Tarkanian said, they'll just slap Cleveland State or whoever, Austin Peay, instead of doing the Blue Bloods. They'll take it out on them. They are not going to do anything at all to tarnish the reputation of Mike Krzyzewski whatsoever. They won't touch him. If they don't touch Roy Williams, they sure as hell aren't going to touch Mike Krzyzewski. I mean, it's hard. I think that Jim Boeheim, he got off relatively easy with only 9 games. And Jim Calhoun, I mean, those are the Blue Bloods. They're not going to touch them. And to a lesser extent, maybe Tom Izzo. But Tom Izzo runs a clean program. They haven't had any violations, so they're not the ones at risk here. But, I hate to lump him in because he does run an absolutely spotless program. And that's coming from a guy who's a Michigan fan, if you haven't already noticed. But it's going to be interesting. But that's where the sham is with the NCAA. Now they're coming down with all of these allegations and all these wrongdoings. They're speeding up the process. They've got a lot of damage control right now with the G League taking their top guns. I'll tell you what, the NCAA is the next couple of years are going to be fascinating to see what they're going to look like. And it's like I said before with all these G League signings, the NCAA will survive. They'll take a hit, but they'll survive because everybody's going to watch the national tournaments, and they're going to watch March Madness. They're going to cheer for their favorite colored uniforms and whatnot. But I just think the rules they have right now, they're so subjective, and their selective punishment is a joke. So that's what I want to sit back and see. With all the allegations that have come out on Kansas, especially, all the money being paid some of these kids, and the friends of the program from Adidas, the known criminals that have hung around there that had the reputations of giving out these gifts, and they turn their heads the other way. Bill Self acts like he doesn't know anything. And I'm sorry. When you're in charge of a program, especially basketball, when you've only got 15 kids, and you don't know you don't hear anything and you turn a blind eye, and I don't buy that for an instance. Don't buy it at all. Just look at blue chips. That's what I always say on a lighter note. Hey, we're going to take a break. We come back. We've got a lot more to talk about. Jeff Disher going to join us at the bottom of the hour. We're on till 2 o'clock Eastern time here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza. You're watching live here on 12 Ounce Sports.
Esports are here to stay. Go to jazzsports.ag, log into your account, and look for our new esports section on the top of your screen. Browse through all the different available matches and watch them live with our exclusive esports betting platform. Get instant access to game results, pending and graded bet reports, outright bet types, and upcoming match schedules, all at the easy reach of your fingertips. Jazz Sports puts you in the game.
Nothing makes us happier at Lexington Law than when our clients cancel our services. Listen to this client call and see what we mean.
Lexington Law Firm, this is Erin.
I would like to cancel my account.
I'm sorry to hear that.
No, don't be. Actually, you guys have done tremendous work for me, and I was working with you for several years now. And my goal was to get a mortgage written by the end of this year, and I just got that mortgage commitment.
That is wonderful.
My credit went from like 440 working with you guys to 700.
Nice.
And I got a very good 4.25% 30-year fixed rate mortgage. I have nothing at all bad to say. If you ever want me to write a testimonial, I will. As a matter of fact, I've recommended you to a lot of friends.
Lexington Law has served over 500,000 clients, taking expert action on their credit that has led to the removal of millions of questionable negative items from their credit reports. Call now and learn more about how Lexington Law may be able to help you in the removal of negative items from your credit report, such as collections, late payments, charge-offs, and many others. Call Lexington Law today.
DrinkAid, ready for distribution worldwide.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on the 12 Ounce Sports Network. Hope everybody's enjoying their Monday afternoon. I want to thank you all for taking time out of your day to let us be a part of your afternoon. And if you're in the Central Time Zone during your lunch hour, again, thanks for letting us be a part of that. Hope you're all staying safe, and we can all get along here, get through this, and get back to hopefully a startup of a nice summer, and we can get out and enjoy the things we like to do. You know, again, when I was talking with Mark Van Vliet, we were talking on the phone earlier this morning, and he said, you know, I can't wait to get back to listening to Dan Dickerson on a warm summer evening calling Tiger baseball, and I'm 100% with them. I know those of you around the country have got your favorite play-by-play man for baseball or whatnot, and nothing better than sitting outside on a warm summer night about 75 degrees with a ginger ale or a Coca-Cola or your favorite beverage, and listening to the summer pastime, the boys' summer. So that's hopefully in the cards. And according to the latest baseball proposal, which could possibly be out tomorrow, which would be fantastic timing for us with a guest we've got coming on tomorrow night at 8:30 Eastern time, will be Jesse Goldberg-Strassler. He is the play-by-play voice of the Lansing Lugnuts, the Toronto Blue Jays single A affiliate. We will their plan for Major League Baseball right now, or according to what is proposed, is an 80-game schedule starting up in early July. And more than likely how it would work is, for example, the American League Central teams would play each other only, and the teams from the National League Central. So that would be St. Louis, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, the Cubs. Cincinnati in that area. So that would be interesting. So hey, it's any kind of baseball, and that's what we're hoping on. And so we'll find that out very shortly, what their plan is. That's their latest hopeful plan to get baseball back. So, and you talk about the other sports. We talked about college football and the college sports earlier today. The NBA season, they were talking in that in order for them to get going, they might need some more concessions from the Players Union, the Players Association. Now, they're talking about how 40% of their revenue comes from the ticket sales and the concessions and the licensing, the selling of their merchandise and whatnot. So they're going to use that. It sounds like they might be using that as a crutch or an angle, if you will, to try to get players to, they want them to take a cut in pay. Well, good luck with that. Now, I know that they announced today, the NBA extended their CBA agreement to where I believe 60 days until September, which means that there's an out in that contract this year. So this could make for some interesting times with the NBA. I know there's already talk of if they don't do that, you could see the revenues, you could see the salary cap taking a hit, which means it could go down, and the players could be looking at having to take a cut in pay anyways. I don't see how that happens. I don't see how the players are going to really go with that. There's going to be concessions have to be made on both ends, but the player, I don't know. Now, they're hopeful to get the season started back up in January. I beg your pardon, in July. That's their goal, the end of June and July, and trying to finish it, and then maybe have a shortened season coming up in 2020 and 2021 where they might only play 70. There's so many variables left with that, but I think not only with the testing now, that's my biggest roadblock. Now you got to start thinking about the players and the owners coming together on agreements and what they're going to do as far as pay goes. Are the players willing to take that pay cut? A lot of them have said they've had enough concessions. And in a lot of respects, I agree with them. The NHL's in the same boat. I don't know. The AHL canceling their season doesn't help the cause, I don't think, of the NHL. Now, obviously, they've got more revenue backing with the television contracts. They're nothing near what the NBA and the NFL have. But I still honestly believe that there's going to be some concessions that have got to be made there. Are the players willing to do it? And are they going to be able to play in all their cities? Now, there's talk in Michigan where possibly they may not be able to do something like this until July. Michigan, we're still in a stay-at-home order, for example. And they're only like in phase 2. So I don't know. By then it's possible, but you've got to have an answer. And I'm not totally sold on it because I see states where Oregon and Washington, they're looking at extending stuff until July. And I honestly think that if they're going to finish this NHL season or NBA, you're going to see bubble cities. There's no way they're going to be able to do everything in all 30 of their cities, especially in Canada too. I mean, you've got the stay-at-home orders for 2 or 3 of their cities up there. The big ones, Toronto and Calgary, for example. No large gatherings until June 30th. I mean, how do you know that's not going to get extended? And again, I fall back on the test issue. How are they going to get enough tests? Are they going to be able to track it? So many variables with that. But I getting back to the NBA, what struck me this morning is when they said 40% of their income comes from ticket sale revenue and marketing, merchandising sales, and concessions. That's a lot of money. If they're banking on that, they're going to go to the players union and say, hey, we need you to take another pay cut or whatnot. How many of the players are going to do that? How many do you really think are going to do that? So I don't think they're out of the woods just yet. I hope they are. I know some of the places are going to start opening up their facilities where they can only have one-on-one instruction and they got to stay within 12 or they got to stay 12 feet away from each other. There's no pickup games and legally anyways that can go on. And, it's all based on where you're at. There's some states still won't let you do that till the end of the month. Wisconsin and Michigan are an example. I know that the teams are trying to get exceptions from the government. And I know sports is a help for the psyche of the American people. It always has been. You can deny it all you want. It's not it is not a necessary evil, if you will. It's not their primary focus, but it does help. And they might get a little leniency in some states, but it's not a nationwide thing. Texas, I know the Dallas Mavericks aren't opening anything up yet. So there's a lot of obstacles in the way. And I'm not trying to be a gloomy Gus here. I want to see them play. But I just think there's not only the testing part, you still got to get both sides in agreement on this, whether it's going to work or not. Well, hey, let's go to our guest line. And on the other end of our line, a regular friend and contributor to the show, Jeff Disher. Jeff, how's everything going with you today?
I am above ground, vertical. I got two things for you. One, Sparty on.
Oh, boy. Uh-huh.
2, you can now officially play that funky music for the last half hour there, white boy.
All right, right on. Right on. So lots to talk about today. We had, we were just talking about the viability of having the winter sports start back up. I think getting kind of not any help, at least, is the AHL announcing this morning that they're going to cancel the rest of their season and the Calder Cup playoffs, which will be the first time that's ever happened where there will not be a Calder Cup trophy given out. And that's a tough pill to swallow. But Jeff, I'm not surprised that they canceled the season.
No, I don't. They made the right call. Mm-hmm. However, I was hearing, I did hear that part of the segment, and so I'll approach it like this. It's a great. Okay, let me backtrack from the word "great" if I can. It is just business as usual, actually, for the NHL, who are treating it like they would with the roster expansion after the AHL season comes to an end in a non-pandemic affected AHL season. So these NHL rosters can expand. I forget the number off the top of my head, but it would be great for these NHL clubs to have the extra bodies when necessary, or with the AHL season canceled.
That's a great point. I never thought of that. That could very well happen with these teams that need, like you said, they need the roster expansions come July if they do indeed get the seasons back up.
And with these seasons, with the potential of these seasons coming back, you were just speaking about the MLB proposal that'll come out in the next 24 hours. And I've heard the same things that you have with regard to the 80 games. And I agree with you fully. testing is going to be a big issue, but this plan, or this regionalized plan where you have teams in the American League Central like the Twins, Tigers, Royals, Indians, playing teams in the NL Central like the Reds, Cardinals, Cubs, Brewers, Pirates. Got all five.
There you go.
And I feel like that would be the best option of the three versus bubbling yourself in Arizona or bubbling yourself in Arizona and Florida, as had been previously discussed. And look at it from the perspective of a stadium worker for the Twins, in my case, for the Twins, who are missing out on potential revenue. So I'm on board with an 80-game season. I have a vested interest in it, obviously, but I'm on board with an 80-game regionalized season. So I'm hoping, and I know a few others close to me are hoping for that to come to fruition.
Oh, I think it's the best idea that they've had out of all of them for Major League Baseball, and I think that it will work out for you if they do it that way. And I can honestly see, too, Jeff, that if everything goes good and the phases are still, they go to phase 5 or phase 6, you can see, depending on the state, where you could see possibly a 25% limit on attendance in the fall, in September, for Major League Baseball games or whatnot. I think it's the right way to go, and I think it will come to fruition for Major League Baseball. I'm just not sold on the NHL and the NBA from this standpoint, like I talked about with the NBA.
Yep.
They've got, with their 40% that they claim that they're getting out of ticket revenue and concessions and merchandise, they're going to go to the players union and they want cuts. They want pay cuts. And I just don't know how willing the players union I don't know how willing they're going to accept that.
Can I play devil's advocate a second?
Absolutely.
If I am a player in the NBA and I have my head of the players association coming to me and saying, "Hey, Jeff, you've got to, for the good of the league and the good of actually getting back to organized play, organized work, we're going to need you and your teammates to take an additional pay cut or two just to have enough money to put bread on the table and get all of the hundreds of NBA players back to work and NBA franchises back to work." I'm of the mindset in that case that I would look to the greater good and not think selfishly, because I would want to get back to work, as would my teammates. So my thought would be take another pay cut, let's get back to work, and then everything down the road will make up for that.
Well, that's altogether fine, and I like your side of it. Here's my thing with this, though. They extended for 60 days the collective bargaining agreement, or the window where they can opt out of it. And I got a feeling that the NBA, the management side, is going to use that as leverage. They're going to say, okay, you don't want to play ball with us, all right? We will opt out of it in September 15th or whatever the date is. And there's a possibility that there could be a lockout. And until they get their demands then. And I know both sides don't want that. I think it could come down to ultimately a game of chicken on each side. But, I mean, I know they both sides ultimately want to play. It's hurting their pocketbooks. So I do think ultimately we will have if they can get it medically cleared and there's a feasible way to do it, which I think could be in a bubble for the NBA, I think ultimately that they will win out. The season, if they can medically do it, they'll play.
And on the NHL side, speaking of the factors that are getting both the Players Association and the league back to the bargaining table, I have heard in the last few days that the NHL is considering floating a proposal that would jump straight to a 24-team playoff as opposed to finishing the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
Would it put money back in the players' pockets? Yes. Would it essentially be like a pay cut for missing the end of the regular season? Yes. But I'll tie the NHL and NBA together if I can and say, for the greater good, why not take the hit now, take the kick to the Stones now, and then down the line, it will all get made back up.
Oh, I can't argue with that at all. I think that's a great idea. Again, I ultimately as a sports fan, I want to see the games come back. And there's so many different avenues. You've got the draft coming up with the NHL supposedly here in the next 6 weeks. It doesn't sound like they may move that. I mean, there's so many variables that are involved with the NHL right now that I think that if they can, they'll finish the season. You got to look at teams like Detroit and Ottawa that have no chance to make it. Are they really that interested in coming back to play?
Exactly. And I was going to say, an apology to your Red Wings, Legion, and I'm a Red Wing fan too. I hate seeing a franchise with the lineage that the Red Wings have stuck at the bottom of the barrel in the Eastern Conference. However, they will come back stronger and bring us back to the times in the 90s where they were great with your names like Fedorov, Yzerman, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Jeff, they're too good a franchise. I'm sorry to interrupt you. They're like, you're right. You're exactly right. But I look at them and I look at teams like the Blackhawks and whatnot they were bottom of the barrel for a few years, and then they had a great run. I agree 100% with you. They'll be back. It's a very cyclical thing, especially now. You go on that run, you give me 25 years what Detroit had, I'm more than happy with taking the downtime for 5 years.
And the NBA is the same way. Look at the last 10 years with the Golden State Warriors. They're out of the they're outside the castle even, getting ready to cross the bridge. However, the Warriors basically took the mantle from I believe it was am I right in saying the Lakers in the late 2000s?
Yeah, in the 2010s, yeah.
And one more point I want to make quickly on the college, or two more points I want to make quickly on the college side of the lecture. College football will be back, and to your point earlier about the about money making in terms of these colleges, they need college football to come back, even if the stadiums are at a quarter to maybe 2/3 capacity, or quarter to 2/5 capacity, 40% capacity. You need college football to come back to drive all of these other sports, like your college wrestling, like your ice hockey, etc. And to your point earlier about men's and women's basketball being a moneymaker, I agree. However, football is the straw that stirs the drink in terms of your Division I, Division II, Division III colleges. And so having college football back with playing in front of 40% full stadiums, better than nothing.
Well, I think it was awful premature for Mark Emmert to say that, but I also think that the NCAA right now, they're a ship where they've got a hole in the stern and they're taking on water fast. You look at basketball, with the G League, and now with all these allegations that supposedly are going to come down in the next week or so, you've got Louisville, you've got Kansas, you've got supposedly Arizona, Creighton, and then, of course, now the latest last night with Zion, and, people are wanting him to come forward with the ill-gotten gains supposedly they had. And, their reputation is shot in a lot of people's eyes. And it's like I said, the Power 5 conferences don't need the NCAA for football especially. The NCAA needs them. They're NCAA bound in name only. They could break away, do their own thing, and the NCAA is done. And I think for them to say that was a little premature. I think he's trying to posture, and they have no credibility. And like you said, and I'll say it again, the NCAA, they need the money. The football is the cash cow. They need the television revenue in. Your point is very well taken. 25%. You get 25,000 people in the big house, or at 20,000 people in Tennessee, or 20,000 people in Minneapolis for a game. They'll take that. And I think that's going to happen. I think as long as they've got any kind of percentage of kids coming to class, because the schools are going to go out of their way to get them in, because that's where their revenue is too, and academically. And I see football coming back.
And if we can expand on the NCAA point a second, the NCAA and the Big Five, or the Power Five, I should say, we agree. The NCAA needs the Power Five more than the Power Five needs the NCAA. Mm-hmm. Look as far back as the Bowl Alliance, which was a precursor to the BCS. Mm-hmm. At and everything escapes me, but before the Bowl, I'm trying to think back to before the Bowl Alliance, I want to say college football national champions were established by the Associated Press poll, and there wasn't much in the way of a national championship game recognized by the NCAA.
You're correct. You're 100% correct. And the UPI, they were in alliance with the college coaches because there was two different polls back then. And, you don't need an NCAA to do that either. It like you said, name only. So you're absolutely right.
And those two polls, correct me if I'm wrong, were the AP poll and the ESPN USA Today poll, correct?
Well, yeah, and ESPN sponsored that. That's right, because for many years it was the Associated Press and United Press International back in the 60s and 70s, and the UPI poll, before they went out of business, that's when the USA Today and ESPN took it over. But that was a coach's poll.
That's right.
So, yeah.
And as far as Division II, Division III Division II and Division III need the NCAA, much like the NCAA needs the schools in Division II, Division III. Mm-hmm. So for those that are trying to tell me, well, the NCAA needs every school on board. No. The Power Five have already essentially broken away with the creation of the BCS back in 1998, mm-hmm. as well as the College Football Playoff in 2014. Now, can the College Football Playoff be expanded? You bet your backside. Yeah. However, that is a discussion for another day.
Right. No, I agree 100%, and it's going to be very, very interesting, fascinating this year to see what happens in all the other sports as well. As it's there's going to be some contraction as far as scheduling, I believe, with like in college hockey and things like that. But it's all in due time. Hey, Jeff, let's switch gears here. Let's talk about The Last Dance. That was episode 7 and 8 last night on ESPN. It's obviously very intriguing. It's the mindset of Michael Jordan is always on display, and it answered a couple of questions for me when going to when his dad was murdered. A lot of people thought it might have been gambling oriented. I don't believe it was. I think it was random. And I just think Michael Jordan really indeed was burnt out. But the argument that I'm going to take to my grave is I got so upset with Bleacher Report when they put that thing out Friday, I think it was, that compared him as a two-sport athlete to Bo Jackson and to Deion Sanders. I'm sorry. There's no way that he should be compared to those two.
I agree, and I definitely I'm just now hearing about those comparisons for the first time. But you cannot compare Michael Jordan playing both basketball and baseball over his professional career to a Deion Sanders at all, to a Bo Jackson again at all. I mean, and Bo would come closer for me, or a comparison to Bo comes closer for me than a comparison to Prime with the sports that they played. I believe Bo. Or actually, let me reverse that. Prime was not as, or did not do as well in baseball, from my recollection.
You're right.
Like Bo. So a comparison to Bo would be a more fitting comparison than a comparison to Prime. And for those who don't know Prime, I'm referring to Deion.
Right. And I look at his statistics, and I get where, you've got Jerry Krause, and they also interviewed, Tito Francona, and they said if you'd have had 1,500 at-bats, he might have made the majors. I just don't buy it. I mean, he was a 200 hitter. He had some wheels. Yeah, he had 30 steals. And, I can remember when he started, he had that hitting streak, but then the pitchers figured him out, started throwing him curveballs, and he could never get over that. And so, but what I want to focus the majority on the shows last night, again, were his mental makeup and how he just hated for any little thing to have an edge over him.
Yes.
Taking some of these things, fabricating some things. He just is how he takes that narcissistic approach, but he uses it to such his advantage.
And he would impart that advantage that he had that narcissistic approach that he had on his teammates to a point where in the mid 90s, because we haven't come to the 1997 NBA season where they played the Jazz, and then the 98 season where they played the Jazz again. But up until 96, he could use his narcissistic approach with his teammates to give the Bulls as a franchise an advantage that no other team in the NBA had. And I will also say that the Knicks in the later 90s got close, if not closer, than the Pistons did in the early 90s.
Well, they were darn close. I will say that much. I will agree with you on that. And one of the other things that I took out of the show last night, and I forgot for a moment about what Scottie Pippen did in that 94 playoff series against the Knicks, I believe it was, when he wouldn't go in for that final shot. I got to tell you, Jeff, he is damn lucky that Kukoc made that shot.
Well, how about in the night? Let me switch gears slightly and go back to 96. I did a radio report on that very final series with the Bulls and Supersonics. I won't even go into the that entire, because I can't do it in one breath. However, just look at how stacked the Chicago Bulls were in the 96 season, top to bottom. I can remember names like Pippen, obviously, Kukoc, et cetera. Maybe Will Perdue, et cetera. The only names that I can remember from that Supersonics roster that played in the 96 finals off the top of my head, Gary Payton, where the glove finally got to show some love, and Sean Kemp.
Mm-hmm. That's it. Yeah. I forgot that's who they played until last night. I knew they played Utah the next 2 years, but I thought Seattle. I forgot that they were that good. I mean, but that, I look at that team, and again, what I guess surprised me a little bit about how Jordan was driven to tears towards the end of episode 7, because he just, he wanted people to like him, but that just wasn't in his DNA. But then you turn around in the next series or the next show, how he was riding Scotty Burrell and, Steve Kerr. And they don't even talk yet about Luke Longley. Now, Luke Longley, from all accounts, he denied to go on this show. He wouldn't go. So you can tell there's some animosity about that. And I got to give Steve Kerr mad props for taking a swing at Jordan, man.
And as far as people around the organization at that time, look at Peter Vesey being not being interviewed for the show, and he was around the Bulls because practically that's where their number one broadcast team for NBC was practically stationed at the United Center.
Oh boy!
And Peter Vesey was one of the roving reporters that NBC used during the life of the NBA contract that they had from 1991 until 2002. So, not utilizing Peter Vesey in a role where he is basically encyclopedic was a drastic miscalculation by Jason Heyer and company.
Well, I got a feeling he probably. I have the sneaking suspicion that Michael Jordan probably has something to do with that. Peter Vesey is not afraid to speak his mind, and you've got two alpha males, so to speak. Michael with his thinking, and I think that Peter Vesey isn't going to be all peaches and cream like Ahmad Rashad was, and that used to just drive me crazy. I know he was a beloved player for your Vikings, but I got to tell you, he lost all credibility with me with his Nerf toss questions for how many years. He to me is the Brian Windhorst of the 1990s, because Brian Windhorst made his bones being the lackey for LeBron James. Just an observation, Jeff.
But that entire, I don't know if it was episode 6 or 7 where the famous sunglasses interview with Ahmad happened.
Yes.
Was it?
It was 5. It was at the end of 5, but they showed it again a little bit in 6.
Okay, so in the sunglasses interview, what many don't seem to recall or want to recall, Dick Ebersol, who led NBC Sports at that time as executive producer before I believe Sam Flood took over, was that Dick Ebersol wrote all of those questions for Ahmad.
Yeah. Oh, it used to drive me nuts. We got a couple minutes left, Jeff. I want to bring up one last point on it, and I know this is going to raise the ire of people that say, get off your lawn, but I want to bring up the point about load management. Michael Jordan came back in 95, played the rest of that year, and then played the next 3 years. How many games did he miss? 0.
Yep.
And look at what they do now. And that really hit home with me last night when I heard that stat, and I heard it again this morning. God bless LeBron James. He's a freak of nature. He is a top 5 to top 10 of all-time player. But the load management thing, that's always going to be the standard bearer right now between him and Michael Jordan, in my opinion.
Agreed. And the crap, if I can use the term, the crap
right. Yep.
that the the BS that the NBA is pulling with load management for its top stars and finding these teams for sitting top stars in situations where national TV is involved is complete BS.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And so have these players show off on the biggest stage, like your Saturday prime times, your playoff games, your NBA finals, and bring fans back or get as close to what it was like in basketball's heyday in the 1990s and early 2000s before the Malice at the Palace.
Right.
Sorry, Pistons fans.
No, it is what it is.
Dead in its tracks. Just ask Ron Artest about that.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Jeff, I got to leave it there. We're up against it. Thanks, as always, for coming on. It's been great. We'll get you on again real soon. Have a good rest of your day. You
as well, Louis.
Thank you. Jeff Disher, one of our main contributors here on the show. And, you know, again, to compound on that point, when the teams are letting him do that. And what Michael Jordan said was that he thought he owed it to the game to give his best effort every game and to be there for every game. And I'll never forget that. You know, and again, as much as I sometimes, I think Michael Jordan's an ass. A lot of his teammates thought he was. I won't give you the whole name, but ass and then 4 other letters. You know, the guy was driven to win and driven to be 100 miles an hour. LeBron James might be there. He might be close. But Michael Jordan didn't take a 2-week vacation. And I guess that's what bothers me about it. And I just, that's where the comparison ends right there. Michael Jordan to me was the ultimate competitor compared to LeBron. He didn't take the time off. He didn't ask for all that time off. If he's healthy, he's playing. And I believe that's where you got to draw the line. Well, that's going to do it. Our show's just about over. We're running out of time. Don't forget, join us tomorrow night at our normal time, 8 until 10 p.m. Eastern time, here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network, as we'll have Jesse Goldberg-Strassler at 8:30 talking baseball. He's the play-by-play voice of the Toronto Blue Jays single-A affiliate, the Lansing Lugnuts. And then Matt Gamlin, my old tag team partner, will be at 9 o'clock Eastern to talk the Money in the Bank pay-per-view from last night. So, and a whole lot more. Don't forget to join us tomorrow night, normal time, 8 until 10 p.m. Eastern time. For Jeff Disher, this is yours truly, Captain Lou, saying keep your heads up, keep your sticks down, keep your feet moving, and as always, keep your minds open. Good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on the 12-Ounce